Ultimate!
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
G'day Equity Mates, and welcome back to another episode where we're tracking our journey of investing. And whether you're an absolute beginner or approaching Warren Buffett status, our aim is to help break down your barriers from beginning to dividend. Now, if you're joining us for the very first time, a huge welcome. It is great to have you as part of the Equity Mates community. It is great that you are starting your investing journey. If you feel like you need to get up to speed, we do have another episode.
See?
We do have another show. Ren's showing me stuff on Instagram. We do have another show called Get Started Investing, which will get you up to speed. Now, while we are licensed, we are not aware of your financial circumstances. So any information on this show is for education and entertainment purposes only. Any advice is general. But with that said, my name is Bryce. And as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you?
I'm very good, Bryce. I've put the phone down and
Nice.
I am fully focused.
Good.
I'm excited for this interview. This was a great one. Rachel Cruze joined us in the studio, well, virtually in the studio, all the way from Tennessee.
Yeah.
The daughter of Dave Ramsey. Now, people may be familiar with that name, but if they're not, Dave Ramsey, one of the biggest money personalities in the world, has, I think, the third biggest radio show in the US. Not money radio show, just radio show, massive. I think he does 3 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
That's the kind of content production I want to get to.
No, you don't.
And Rachel has followed in his footsteps and has her own show, the Rachel Cruze Show, co-hosts the Dave Ramsey Show, and has written a number of best-selling books as well. So some serious money expertise joining us today.
Yeah, but what I liked about it, you would think that being the daughter of Dave Ramsey, you'd have it all down pat. But I think, throughout the interview, she was honest that she still has things that she's working on in her money journey. It was great to get an insight into how she thinks about money with her kids and her husband, some of the budgeting hacks, and also passive income tips to fight the cost of living crisis that we're going through at the moment. And then we dig into how she thinks about building wealth through investments like property and stocks as well. So, yeah, it's a great interview. Well, Rachel, welcome to Equity Mates.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, you guys. I appreciate it.
I'd love to know if you could take us through the story of your first investment. We always like to know from our guests if there was a story or if it was just plain and simple, dollar cost into an ETF, whatever it is, but if you could share the story of your first investment.
Yes. Okay. So my first investment, I'm going to give credit to my parents on that one. They opened up a mutual fund in each of our names that they just kind of put some money in. And it was under like an UTMA, in America, like the Universal Transfer of Minors Act. So under that act, you can open on behalf of a child an investment. So they did that. Gosh, I don't know how old I was. I mean, they probably like 12 or 13.
Nice.
And I remember Dad sitting down with us and like opening up the paperwork and showing us like this graph of like the stock market, here in America and like all of that and starting to learn. Now, granted, at that age, I probably had no idea. But I remember him saying things like, yeah, well, you'll have your mutual fund. And he kept saying that word and reminding us. And so once I graduated college, got married, that was kind of part of a gift of like, hey, here's how to help you start off life. And they didn't put that much in, but you guys know with investing and compound interest, it's such a great thing seeing it grow. So we never really cashed it out. We used that money and continued to let it grow and put more money in. So we still have that same fund today, which
Love
is crazy.
that.
Nice.
It reminds me a lot of Bryce's money story here. We often joke about he's sort of the textbook example of how you should teach your kids about money, and I'm the opposite. I was a dumb 20-year-old just throwing money in the stock market and losing it. And Bryce, similar to you, sat down with his parents and started investing at a very early age. You've actually written a #1 New York Times best-selling book, Smart Money, Smart Kids, all about helping kids or teaching your kids the right money habits and about investing and stuff like that. How have you then gone about teaching your kids, and like what are some of the key things that Bryce and I don't have kids yet, but we're in our 30s now. It's coming quickly. What should we be thinking about when we have kids and we want to teach them about money?
Yes. I think one of the basic things my parents did, which was so smart, and it's something we're doing with our kids, is teaching them that money comes from work. Money doesn't just appear. It doesn't just like come from mom and dad with this magical card that we swipe or on our phones that we get to tap a button and just stuff appears. Money, you have to make money by working. So we teach them that, just doing chores around the house and making them earn some money. And then, we say it a lot of like, hey, we're going to work, and thankfully, I think we all have a level of service in all of our work if you can view it in that standpoint. So I'm like, I get to go and help people, but also I make money so that we can put food on the table and live in this house. And I do remind them. And if stuff breaks, I'm like, it costs money. And mom has to go to work and dad has to go to work to make money to replace that. Like it's become like a theme because I'm like, I want them to know, like so ingrained that that's where money comes from. It comes from work. So it has been a big, push of mine and my husband's to connect work and money. Because I just think that's really important for especially the younger generation. I just want them to know that that's where it comes from. And then once you earn money, you can give it, you can save it, you can spend it. So even having little jars in their room so they know the difference, so it's really, it's honestly basic stuff. It's nothing that's like really complicated. The mutual fund stuff, that's great discussion, but you don't need to teach your 4-year-old that. Like they're okay. They can go through life and be okay without that right now. But what's fascinating too is we've just now run up against this. It's kind of become a problem. And so we had to put a stop to it because my 2 older girls, they're 8 and 5. So they're still little. But it was like everything was like, okay, if I go upstairs and get dressed for school, do I get $1? And we're like, no. And it's like, everything, they just want money. And then it was like, can we get Amazon on your phone, Mom? Can we hit the Amazon app? Can we go to Target? Can we go? And they just wanted to buy. And it kind of was a thing that was building for about 2 months. And just last week, we set them down and we're like, we're not buying you all anything. You can't spend your money. You can do nothing about acquiring stuff until August 1st. Nothing. And so our deal with them is whatever they save through these 3 months, we're going to double. We'll match it. And then they can go buy some stuff. But it was like little materialistic children running around being like, I want, I'll do this to make that. And I'm like, oh, this is exhausting. So it ended up kind of backfiring a little bit. I felt it. So all that to say, the intention is all good. I still think it's great lessons, but sometimes you even need boundaries with little ones to keep all the stuff out.
Love that.
Man, they will just buy.
Well, Rachel, you say that you're a natural spender through a lot of the content that you do, which I think is great. It's not all about, it's about being honest with yourself and then developing a money plan from there. So how have you gone about developing an effective money plan I'm pretty sure a lot of us sitting at home listening to this will think of ourselves as natural spenders. So what are some of the ways that you developed a plan that suited your spending?
Yeah, I think having long-term priorities is really big. So I just knew like as a spender, you have to have a level of maturity to be like, okay, if I really do spend everything I make, I'm going to be broke. So we can't do that. And I would say on the other end, savers have to develop some maturity to say, okay, I can't just hoard and hold on 24/7. I have to actually live and take a little bit of risk and enjoy, which takes some maturing on their end, right? Because it both is a little bit of this like playing into the fear of what I'm not going to get if I go to these extremes of a complete spender or saver. So for a spender, I've just had to look ahead and say, okay, I know 60-year-old Rachel is still going to be a spender. It's just part of my natural wiring and I want her to have a great life. So what are the things I need to do to set her up well in the future? And that's where investing comes into play, saving for retirement, all of that. And so that's been a big thing. And then my spending in the present, I just have some pretty hard lines. Like I will never use debts. I won't go into debt for stuff. I will save up and pay for stuff with cash, live within my means. And then within my budget, my husband and I's budget, we have line items for us. So I have a Rachel line item. So I can still enjoy and spend in that line item with that amount of money that we've agreed on. So I still get to enjoy life and spend, but it's just not completely out of control. Yeah. So that's where I think that middle ground has come for me. And it's been really helpful because I'm like, yeah, I know that I'm doing the smart thing, but you guys love investing. So you maybe feel different, but still like when I invest, I'm like, it just feels like this black hole. Like I just like put money in. I'm like, I just feel like I will never see it again, even though I know I will later down in life, but it is still hard. I've been doing it, for 13 years. And it's still, as a spender, you're still kind of like, oh man, that could take a really great vacation. But we're going to put that money away.
I think that's reassuring in some ways to hear that, though. You know, you've grown up around money experts, and you're a money expert yourself, and to hear that you still have those, you know, psychological challenges and the cognitive biases that come with investing, it's reassuring to know that everyone goes through these challenges. And I think, speaking of challenges, this year and last year have been particularly challenging for everyone around the world. You know, we're speaking on opposite sides of the world, and we're both facing cost of living crisis, inflation, rising interest rates. The story is pretty universal. And really, when it comes to a cost of living crisis, there are two ways broadly that you can deal with it. Find ways to make more money, or find ways to reduce your spending. And, you know, between your show, the Rachel Cruze show, and co-hosting your dad's show, the Dave Ramsey show, you've spoken to, I was going to say thousands, but it's probably millions of people at this point about this challenge. What are some of the things that you're hearing, and what are some of the top tips that you have when it comes to this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, so many people, they're facing it, and it's like, oh. And so I think the hardest thing to realize is, you know, whether you read studies that wages aren't keeping up with inflation, you know, like you can pull all this data, but the reality is, at the end of the day, you know, people are sitting in their homes and they're thinking, oh my gosh, like, it costs how much to buy groceries right now? We don't have it. So that pain and that fear is so real. And I think one of the things is, it's so uncomfortable, but there has to be a level of sacrifice. Like, there's a point with money that it is so emotional, but also it is so mathematical. Like, math doesn't have feelings, right? So the numbers have to work for you. And even though it's hard and it's not fun, you have to make those work. So whether that is cutting back expenses and saying, man, the luxuries that we were able to afford right now, we can't. Hopefully in the future, and there's some indicators that it might start getting better. But right now, we have to still make this math work. Math isn't emotional. We are emotional with it, but we have to make this work. And so it's always hard to go backwards. So it's always hard to have something and then to pull back. That's a natural bent I think everyone has. But at the end, I always say, like, what is that price, though? Is the price of having all the subscriptions, going out to eat when you want, even a car that you can't, you know, the car payment is too much, like having all this stuff, is that worth your peace of mind? Because at the end of the day, I think if you remove it and actually gain peace and control and can sleep at night, that is a much higher quality of life than having just stuff around you. So even though it's hard to go backwards on your expenses, it's something that everyone, you really do have to look at and say, man, what are my needs versus wants? So that's that part of the equation. And I would say too, on that, to look to see, okay, what are just habits that we kind of think are needs because it's just what we do, versus no, what do we really need? Because we can get in rhythms in life, and you just, you know, whether it's picking up fast food on Tuesday nights because the kids have sports, or like whatever the thing is that it just becomes a habit, question everything, because you will find some money. You really can. And then on the working side, you know, I think the internet has brought so much good and so much terribleness to the world. But in one way, I'm like, you can make great money. You know, this is like one of the best times to start a side business or a side hustle in life. So whether it's actually physically going out and doing something, or even just from your computer from home, you know, whether it's freelancing or doing what you can to earn some extra money, you know, doing that is helpful. But I would rather cut expenses than take on extra work, because I think there's a point that you can just keep working more and more and more to keep funding a lifestyle, and they just kind of keep pacing, versus saying, hey, if we have to live within this, what are the sacrifices we can make there to kind of have some margin? And again, just for a period of time, hopefully this isn't forever, but it really is important to evaluate it, because the end result is you winning with money long-term and having peace. That's the biggest stuff that is so key.
Are there any great examples you've seen recently of people being able to generate passive income online? Ren and I are doing a challenge at the moment where we did the maths. As you said, maths numbers don't lie. They don't have feelings. We've worked out that if you invest $100 a month for 40 years and you just take the market return, that'll generate a savings of $350,000. So we're challenging ourselves to generate an extra $100 a month. but we're battling with ideas.
You're battling with ideas.
I'm battling with ideas on how to do it. So do you have any examples from people that you've been working with or speaking to on generating passive income?
Yes. Oh gosh. I mean, on the education side, people will pay a lot for things like tutoring. So again, you kind of have to have maybe some specialties in this, but anything around tutoring, teaching a language to abroad, which is the great thing about the internet, you can reach people that way. I find people that are great when it comes to like grammar and writing, editing papers and articles for businesses. And again, it's more of that freelance work. So I think that's where the power is. If you can be your own boss and be able to generate that income, I think that's great. But I would also say, just as a jump start, honestly, selling stuff online.
Yeah.
Like we have all so much crap in our house that we don't use and don't need. And so that can't last forever. Obviously, you'd run out of stuff eventually. But if you just kind of need like a jump start, just look and see like, okay, what are the clothes that I don't wear? Where secondhand stuff I can sell stuff to, or furniture, like whatever it is, see what's around that you can sell because people will pay for it.
Yeah, so Bryce and I are struggling with the challenge a little bit, but one of our team members here, Em, has been killing it. She rents her like her formal dresses and stuff online, and she was telling us she earned $600 last month doing it. We're like, oh
my God.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you're right.
But I don't think I've got no one wants to rent my t-shirts. That's the thing.
No, definitely not. So Rachel, when we're
awesome.
when we're thinking about money and saving for retirement, one thing we think is sometimes lacking from the conversation is what is doing enough. We're in our 30s, and when we're younger, what is doing enough now to get to the number you want? And then when you're thinking about your future, what is that retirement number, that golden number that will give you enough to live the life that you want as you're older? So when we sort of think about that, how much should we be doing today, and then what should we be aiming for in the future? How do you think about that? And I guess, do you have like a golden number that you're chasing?
Yeah, so we kind of run this formula that we tell majority of people doing the baby steps here at Ramsey Solutions that 15% of your income should go into retirement. So overall, that we have found for majority of the scope of ages, like that should be enough by the time you get to retirement. That 15% until you pay off your house and you do some other really big goals. And then once you're completely debt free, then you'll have the income to throw more at retirement. But I love that y'all said that, because I think it's true that retirement's more of a number, not always an age. People kind of think I got to get to this certain age and then I'm going to retire. But some people get to that age and they don't have retirement savings. So they can't retire. They have to keep working. So that number, I think, is a really important goal. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of embarrassed to say, I don't know if I have a specific number that I'm like, oh yeah, we're shooting for that. I think starting early was really helpful. So we knew if we kind of just stay on our rhythm, we're going to be more than fine and it's going to be great. But yeah, we have more of a number for like short-term savings and that kind of stuff that like we want to hit this in order to do X, Y, and Z. But retirement specifically, we kind of just keep that 15% going in. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now. It's a good exercise. I'm like, man, we've talked about numbers in other areas of our financial life, but retirement itself, I just keep being like, oh yeah, it's just, we're chalking away that 15%.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm the same, and I'm sure Bryce is as well. I don't think any of us have a number that we put up on the wall, and I'm not sure how big the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, is in the US, but I look at the certainty that because I respect people who do FIRE a lot. They're saving so much and they're cutting their expenses, but they have a FIRE number that they're chasing. But for me, I think about the future. We're living through inflation at the moment. I think about how much I'm going to change in the future, and I'm like, I have no idea how much I'm going to want to spend when I'm 60, how many kids I'll have, if I'll have paid off a house. And so I think like that uncertainty is always the thing that gets me. And I guess, how do you think about that? Like when you're planning for such an uncertain future, how do you factor all that in?
Yeah, it's a great question, because even that movement, like you said, part of it's so intriguing and impressive that you're like, oh my gosh, they're doing all this so early and they're able to retire. But I think too that there's a mindset, not with all of them, but some of them, where it's like, I just don't want to work anymore. And I think there's a dignity to working. There's something about being able to put gifts into the world and what you have to say and what you have to offer. That can be a great thing. So seeing work as like the evil thing that it can be in that movement, I kind of hate that. Sometimes they vilify work, even though some work is terrible and not fun and you work for a jerky boss and you need to get out and do the thing that you're passionate about and that you love. That's the goal. So when you have that, I think like ending work isn't the goal in life. It's to have just a prosperous, enjoyable life. So how can I do that? And I think work can play into that for people's story. Maybe not everybody, but that's where a little bit sometimes when I hear them talk, I'm like, oh, but work isn't the enemy, but they sometimes can make it feel like that, certain ones I've heard. But the uncertainty, I think that it's very real. And the hard thing is we don't have a crystal ball. So I think going back and looking at patterns and looking at data and doing what we can to see, okay, how has history repeated itself? And, the truth is, there's kind of the doomsdayers on one end that's like, all the banks are going to collapse and money's not even going to be a currency anymore. And the dollar, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, if that happens, we're all screwed because there's like nothing you plan for that is ever going to even be the plan that you're going to use. So like at that point, there's like really no way to like plan for that because that's just the end of the world is what it feels like. But I don't think we're at that extreme point. I think that here, especially in America, I know there's some difference, with Australia and America. But for me, I'm like, I just believe in our economy enough that I still have a confidence to invest and to still be in the market because I just look at patterns and data and know. And inflation, it goes up and down all the time, throughout history. It was crazy here in the US in the 80s. 70s and 80s went kind of back down, and then, you can watch patterns. So I'm like, I just don't think that this is going to be forever. And I don't think our worst days are ahead either. So maybe a little Pollyanna, but that's coming from data and just confidence in the market.
Equity Mates, we are going to take a very quick break. And on the other side of this, we ask Rachel, what is the one thing that she disagrees with her dad, Dave Ramsey, when it comes to money?
You're listening to Equity Mates Investing Podcast, and we're speaking to Rachel Cruze, the #1 New York Times bestselling author and the daughter of Dave Ramsey, the #1 money expert in the world, you'd say?
You could say that.
I'd say. After you, of course.
Thank you.
But we've spoken to Rachel about budgeting, money habits, getting your personal finances right. And in the second half of this interview, we're turning to the investing and wealth building side of it and asking Rachel how she approaches it.
So, Rachel, let's move to investing and sort of building wealth through the markets, or I guess through investing in assets. You mentioned that it still feels like a bit of a black hole to you. And so how would you define your approach to investing?
My approach to investing, one of them is consistency. I will always be investing. I don't see a day unless, again, something crazy extreme happens that none of us are really prepared for occurs. Then that could be a different story. But even when the market's down, I think consistency is so key because even when you buy at the bottom, it's on sale. You're getting more for what you're paying. And when the market goes back up, you get all those returns. You get those gains as it goes up. You get to ride that ride. And so I think that's really important is the consistency. Also, I would say part of it is that I don't allow fear to be my financial advisor. Fear can cause people to freak out and make really stupid decisions with their money because they're thinking so short term, not long term. Those are two big philosophies that I have as an overall general approach. But then, I have my husband and I, investing into the market, traditional type investing we do, but also real estate. I come from a family that loves real estate. My husband's in that line of work. And so we have one rental property right now, but we kind of do like to diversify. So we do have some goals even within that sector of saying, hey, what if we, did a little bit more when it comes to real estate in the future? So that's something we're thinking about. But that, again, more long-term and not necessarily to generate passive income, but more for long-term equity and all that. So there's different approaches to take, but I'm definitely not a huge risk taker. I can do some aggressive type mutual funds, which I'm comfortable with, but like crypto, like all the new fad stuff, I'm like, I kind of sit on the sidelines and see how it plays out. And maybe I'll jump in one day, but I'm just watching it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about some of the more exotic asset classes, shall we say, like crypto, not part of your investment plan?
No, not right now. I'll never say never, though. I'll never say never. Again, it's just too new. When I put my hard-earned money, I'm like, after I work hard and pay taxes and have money, I want to just put it in something that I know is pretty much a guarantee. So it sounds boring, but I'm like, yeah, just some good growth stock mutual funds.
Yeah. So on that, mutual funds, or for in Australia we call them listed investment companies or managed funds, but they're exactly the same concept. Do you really stick to mutual funds, or are you also investing in individual stocks as well?
I don't do a lot of individual stocks. If it's a small percentage of someone's world net worth and they have this one company they love, I think that's, it's fine. I don't teach on that very often because I just think there's a lot of risk in it, and people that try to play the market, I think I do know studies have been done panning out. Do people come out better ahead doing that? And usually not. Usually you end up losing money in the day trading kind of thing. But again, if it's a small percentage of your world and that's what people want to do, I think that's fine if that's what they want to do. I don't. I don't honestly, the risk is just, I'm like, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So again, the mutual fund is a lot of diversification, which I like. And I mean, it may sound lazy, but it's also just true. I'm like, I just don't have time. Some people are on like these apps and they're sitting there, and I'm like, I mean, if that's like your thing, like that's great. But I'm like, I have 3 little kids. I got a job. I got to get home. I'm doing dinner. 2 kids are at grandma's tonight. Like, I'm like, my life is hectic anyway. So sitting on an app, jumping money around kind of stresses me out. And so the idea of just like parking money somewhere, knowing it's going to grow on average 12% over the course of, 70 years we've seen, that's what feels good to me.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that was a really big learning for me, because when I started investing, as I said, Bryce had the perfect money upbringing, me not so much. And, I saved up my money when I was a university student, put it in an individual stock and managed to lose it all. And a big financial epiphany for me early days was that there are these, ETFs and mutual funds out there that give you instant diversification. And I think for a lot of people listening and for a lot of people starting their investing journey, it's never been easier to get started. Apps like Robinhood in the US and there's a number in Australia that are similar, have brought costs down and have made the world more accessible. But it's still such a confusing world. We have all the access, but none of the knowledge in many cases when we're getting started.
That's a great point.
What are some of the steps, if you could go back and speak to 20-year-old Alec, what are some of the steps you think are the most important steps when getting started?
Gosh, I don't know why I feel so old school talking to you guys. I'm like, y'all are probably like on like the cusp of all this stuff that's happening technology-wise. So honestly, it sounds old school, but it's just true. I love having an investment professional in my corner, someone that does this day in and day out, and finding someone that has the heart of a teacher, not the heart of a salesman. So again, someone that is willing to teach you, because to your point, there's not a lot of knowledge. And so intimidation is such a big hurdle for people when it comes to their finances. And I find when you get these like little sectors of your money life, whether it's insurance or taxes or investing, it's like you get these very specific lanes, and it can be really intimidating because they're using this lingo and these terms, and you're like, oh gosh, I don't really know. And so understanding where you're putting your money is so key. So having an actual person that you can talk to in your corner that, again, does this day in and day out. I mean, they know so much stuff about your overall financial plan, I think is so helpful, and it's so worth it. So I like having someone in my corner. Now, in the US, we have like Vanguard, where you can, put some money in. It's index funds, and that's great. And people, can do that. But I would tell people, and I would sit down with someone and just say, hey, here's my overall financial picture. Because even we sat with ours in January. And there was even like stuff with taxes in our giving with nonprofit stuff that you can put in this fund and take the growth. Like you can do some stuff that you're like, oh, I never would have probably known that. It's so specific. But they know that stuff. So have someone on your team that's great. And again, that you trust, not someone that you're like, oh, they feel kind of greasy. If they do, that's probably because they're kind of greasy, and don't give them your money because you probably won't trust them. But having someone in your corner, I think, is really key.
So, Rachel, investing is obviously a lifelong journey. I don't think anyone ever perfects it, and I think the same probably applies to money journey as well. As we grow older and face new challenges in life, there's always new things to understand and get better at when it comes to our money journey. So what do you think you still get wrong, or what are you trying to work on when it comes to your money habits at the moment?
I think as a natural spender, I still contend like contentment is something that I continue to have to work on. I go through seasons of it that I feel pretty content and I'm good. And then I go through seasons where I'm discontent and I like start buying and emotional spending and that kind of thing. And it's never anything big and luxurious, but I'm like, Amazon has been like the worst thing for me because I'm like, oh yeah, there's a pair of earrings that are $10. They're cute and some bucks. I can get that emotional high so quickly and it's so inexpensive, but still it's so funny how money is such a reflection of us and what's going on. And so, I think for me, the big stuff, we've gotten out of debt. My husband and I have been doing this for 13 years. So with the big money principles, we're not perfect at it, but we've got them down. We do budget consistently and all of that. But I think it's more of the heart's posture for so many people. I mean, everybody, including myself, that you really do have to check because it's out of that is how you handle your money and why you handle the money the way you do. So I'd say it's still the biggest hurdle. I mean, honestly, it's probably still just buying stuff and telling myself no. I'm like, stop it. So I started having like add to cart days where I'm like, oh, I'm bored or like, I just want something new. So I'll just add it to cart and I won't buy it. And it's amazing when the dopamine goes down and you're like, okay, you're off the high. You kind of feel like you bought something because you still kind of shopped and added stuff, but you didn't buy it. So that's helped me.
Nice. I like that.
I like
add to
that.
cart days.
It would be great if Amazon could add like a 48-hour cooling off feature. You couldn't buy it now. Wouldn't be good for their business, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Would be good for social responsibility though.
So Rachel, we're almost out of time, but we did want to ask this question. Your dad has obviously been speaking about money for 30 plus years now. He's one of the biggest experts in the world when it comes to money. Is there anything that you disagree with your dad on when it comes to money?
Okay, so I mean, again, probably the big value stuff. No, I'm like, I just see how debt harms people. I see when you don't have the money to invest, you're missing out on compound interest. I see when you're not a giver that there's just probably a void of joy that is only really found in giving and being generous. So like all these big principles, I see and understand. I do think the way he goes about stuff though is different than me because he is so black and white and like he even has this phrase and I make fun of him for it because he's like change and he'll clap twice and he's like, I mean, if you've been doing stupid, just change. And I'm like, it's sometimes hard to change. And he's like, and he uses this example all the time of smoking. He's like, you met those people that have smoked for 30 years and then they quit overnight because they changed. And I'm like, no, there's still nicotine in their body that they have to like chew gum and get a patch. Like it's hard. It is hard. It's hard to change. So the way I have, again, where he's probably a little bit more black and white on stuff, I'm like, it is hard. Life is really hard. And it's not easy just to change because we are who we are. And so working on yourself and understanding, again, your motivations is such a part of this whole money thing. So I'd say it's in those little quirks here and there where he says stuff that I'm like, no. I'm
going to use that in the office. Change.
Oh my gosh, change. I'm like, sorry. Why don't you change sometimes? No.
Love that. Well, Rachel, it's been an absolute pleasure. We thoroughly sort of thank you for your time. We do have an ongoing sort of competition throughout the year called the Equity Mates Awards. And one of the components of those awards is Expert of the Year. And it is voted for by our community, and by appearing on the show, you are now automatically in the running for Equity Mates Expert of the Year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so,
that would be an honor.
So at the end of the year, first international guest, I think, so for 2023. So at the end of the year, they will all vote to help them get a little bit of an understanding and insight into you beyond what we've discussed about today. Where would you put the beautiful glass trophy that we send you if you win?
Okay. So in my closet, we built a house 2 years ago it's been 3 years. It's before COVID. We moved in November of 19, right before everything happened. So part of my dream was I already said I love clothes, accessories, all things. So in my closet, I have these two shelves with a bench and these two. So I have my two pairs of very nice shoes, the only two nice shoes that I have those, and like a purse. I have some stuff kind of displayed. I would put it on that shelf.
Love
I would
it.
put it on one of those shelves right there.
We
in my
would
closet.
expect a photo, of course.
Of course, if I win, vote for me, y'all. That would be so fun.
Well, Rachel, so thank you so much. As I said, we appreciate your time, and I know a lot of people would have taken a lot of value out of that, given what's going on with the current environment and everyone sort of thinking about the right money habits to ensure that we do have a good foundation. We do appreciate you spending the time with us today. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys. So appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Rachel.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.